What's up, guys? Just a quick word before this podcast gets underway. I want to take the time to thank Rick Sessinghaus and FlowCode Golf for making this episode possible. Rick had some great stories and some great insights into the game of golf, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. With that being said, roll the intro.
Oh, he shanked it. Oh, look at that line, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, boy, is he out of sync. That even sounded, it was a tenor sound, wasn't it, Peter? Oh,
Boy, he gets really leaning on it with the lower body.
that hurt to watch right there.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to That One's OB. Daniel here alongside DJ. As always, DJ, how are we doing?
We're doing fantastic. Special episode today, but I'm excited to be here.
For sure. We do have a very, very special guest. Rick Sessinghaus is joining us on the podcast. Rick has been playing and teaching golf for over 20 years. He's played at both the collegiate and professional levels before turning his focus to coaching. He's the author of Golf, the Ultimate Mind Game, and is best known for coaching top 10 player in the world and two-time major champion Collin Morikawa. He's now broadened his scope as the director of FlowCode Golf and is providing expert insights into the mental aspects of golf. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, guys. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, of course.
So obviously there's so many different directions we can go. There's so many questions we have for you, but we thought we'd start off with kind of how you got into golf yourself. Obviously you're played at some pretty high levels. So we'd love to just hear about how you got into golf, what your experiences early on were like, and how that shaped your view of golf going forward.
Yeah, no, I think it shaped when I started was when I was 12 years old. So nowadays that would be considered late in the game, but I played 5 other sports before I ever played golf. So I did have a different perspective on golf than maybe other junior golfers did. And I honestly was not that good of a junior golfer, but once I quit playing football in high school, I put all my emphasis into golf, just absolutely loved it. It was one of those, as we all know, you think it's an easy sport and then you play it and go, I can't believe how hard it is. And I think that's what sucked me in as an athlete. It's like, I can conquer this, I can master it. And of course, I'm still haven't mastered it. And what that led to was just this obsession. And so I got much better within about a 2 years time when I was 17 to 19. I walked on at Cal State Northridge, which is a Division I school here in Los Angeles area. I was given that opportunity. I was a very average D1 player, a good ball striker, short game, not so good. Mental game was a little erratic to say the least. I was a little more of a Hulk smash kind of guy on the golf course, a little frustrated sometimes.
Cheers.
Exactly. We've all been there, right? And so I learned a lot in that time, and which surprised me. It's that it was much more than just beautiful golf swing or athleticism that was leading these tournaments or winning these college events. And that's when I started to turn a little bit more into the mental side, even reading books, or I actually hired a sports psychologist for a short time when I was a senior in college. So I was experiencing now, wait, there's got to be another kind of puzzle piece to this. And so after that, it really played at just a very low level, professional level, and, with some of the midi tours. And then I started coaching and I absolutely have loved it. So I've been coaching for 28 years now and started off as a swing and putting coach and all this typical stuff, member of the PGA. And then about 10 years in, I go, wow, there's got to be a different answer to this because my players, their golf swings look better, but they're really not performing much better than I thought, or their scores weren't much lower. And that's when I had to kind of look at my own coaching and say, hey, what am I missing? And as I tell everybody, my bias now is the mental game. I believe I was missing coaching the mental game. And so I went back to school. I got a doctorate in applied sports psychology. I wrote the book. And the last 15 to 18 years has been a lot more of working with somebody on their mental side, which we can get into obviously a little bit later. And that led to me getting to work with some really good players, some good juniors, some good college players. And I was fortunate enough that now it's almost 18 years ago, a gentleman and his child walked up to me on the far end of the range at Shoal Canyon Golf Course in Glendale. And the father that said, hey, I heard you work with competitive juniors. I would like you to work with my son. Could you? And he's 8 years old at the time. And I said, well, let me see him hit. He hits. And yes, that was Collin Morikawa. And he had already done some group classes. So he had some great fundamentals already. Okay. But what I really, really enjoyed working with him at his younger age is he was extremely coachable. He loved the game. He had a smile on his face every single time we had a lesson. His father was at every single lesson, but in a good way. All you parents out there that are crazy, come on, support your kids and not get crazy about scoring and rankings and all that kind of stuff. Very supportive. I saw him once a week for 10 years until he went to college. I saw him every Tuesday afternoon. And most of those lessons were done on a golf course, about 70% of them. We would actually go in a golf cart on the golf course, put him in different scenarios. And part of that was me as a mental game coach having somebody understand decision-making and course management and being able to commit to decisions. And certainly we were working on mechanics, everybody. I mean, if he was hitting a poor shot from the rough, I would help him understand what's going to help him mechanically hit that shot too. But that was where my coaching philosophy really shifted, is most of my lessons are done on the golf course. I want to see how people perform out there. The range, yeah, within 3 minutes, I can tell why you're hitting the ball where you're hitting it. But does that always translate over? So that became my obsession. And then especially the last 4 or 5 years, I've gone down even a bigger rabbit hole, which is called flow states, which we'll get into a little bit later. But it's gone from a player that was obsessed to a coach that's obsessed, and now somebody who's obsessed with the mental side of the game to help people play better, but also enjoy the game more. So that's my background.
Right. So I was lucky enough to work with you a little bit through high school, and you were always talking about Collin. At the time, I didn't know him by name, but you were always saying, I have this kid who's playing out at Cal right now who, is just won this, another tournament or something. And it seemed like you knew that he had that kind of it factor. So when did you kind of realize, this kid's got kind of like, what that kind of untangible factor that might make him go really far in the game?
Right. No, and you said the key thing is that it's sometimes not the obvious, right? It's not the obvious ball striker who, when he's 14 years old, hits a 320 and you go, wow, that's a special skill. What I saw at an early age, probably about 12, 13, was somebody who, back to the coachability, but somebody who never made excuses, somebody who was extremely passionate, very curious person. He's always wanting to know why and learning. And that was different. Not every junior golfer takes accountability for their 3-putts. Mm-hmm. It's much easier to blame the bumpy greens, or that person was making a noise, right? So that's what I saw from a mindset standpoint that I felt was way ahead of everybody else. Okay. Now the physical skills, yeah, he had a good solid swing, kept the ball in play, but you would never look at him like, oh my gosh, this guy's a world beater. But as he gained success as a 16, 17-year-old more on the national stage, you could see that he had the parts of the game now. But I always knew that he had that internal part that is, I think the biggest game changer of them all.
Right. Because obviously Daniel and I play in college as well. And so we see a bunch of good players play. And when you play in these tournaments, like, everybody hits the ball good. Everyone's got a pretty good swing. Everyone can kind of get it around. It's really short game and how you handle yourself. And it seemed like you were teaching him that young and early, which is obviously a big part of it. But it's just crazy because you see guys that they're super good at 14. Like you said, they hit at 320 and then they just kind of fizzle out a little bit. There's got to be some other piece there. When you get to a point where everybody hits the ball really good, everybody can kind of get it around. There's got to be some other piece that's missing. And obviously I think you found that with the mental aspect. So I think that's very, very interesting.
And you talked a little bit about also, and not to discount this, but Collin obviously is an extremely good ball striker in and of itself and has a very, very solid fundamental swing. And was that something that you guys were developing from that young age, or did he kind of always really kind of have a good feeling and understanding of how the swing worked and how to work the ball?
Right. I think what's interesting with junior golf, I mean, I work with players who come to me when they're 25, 26 years old. They're already fully physically developed. But you guys know this, is an 8-year-old is going to swing different than a 12-year-old, than a 16-year-old, than a 20-year-old, just because physically they're different. They are taller, they're stronger, they're flexible, and those are the challenging things, to be honest with you, to take somebody who 12-year-old maybe like already ahead 2 years to everybody else, and they're winning all their tournaments, and then everybody catches up physically. Okay. But when you're actually trying to work a golf swing and he's with me the entire time, I know some of those bumps in the road. I know that we have to make sure the clubs are continuing to be measured to make sure they fit for somebody and you're not compensating this way. Or are you strong enough to do the things we want in a golf swing? Juniors are highly hyper flexible, right? So they're very, very flexible, but they're not strong in their core. Those are the things that we looked at. But back to the original question, he had fundamentally always a sound swing. But because he's known for his fade, that fade wasn't produced until he was about 17, 18 years old, because physically he wasn't strong enough in his left glute muscle and to rotate to get the path going to the left a little bit more. A lot of juniors will side bend and slide, which now causes the club to come under plane and flip it. And we tend to see a lot more juniors draw the ball at early ages because that's just their default. So that's where it's interesting, is that, yes, he had a fundamentally good swing. Did he have all the shots? Probably not yet until he was 17, 18, because he wasn't strong enough to do some of the things we wanted to do. Okay.
Right.
And then you go up another level where he can learn how to flight balls in the wind and stuff like that. That's the shot making part of it. But the physical part of a golf swing does require strength and balance and posture and those things that 12, 13, 14, we really don't have the same way.
Right. Right. Well, obviously, everything that you've talked about has worked out very, very well. And obviously now sitting here with Collin ranked as a top 10 player in the world and a 2-time major winner. Obviously, you've been here for all of that. And I've got to assume you've had some pretty cool experiences with that. What tops your list? Obviously, there's probably so many. But if you could give us a couple examples, what kind of tops your list of where you're sitting there and you're thinking like, man, this is awesome. Like just being able to be here.
Yeah, so I would say that it would be the 2 majors, but for completely different reasons, everybody. So his first win major-wise was the 2020 PGA Championship during the COVID season, right? During the COVID year. So I am walking, I did not see round 3. That's a long story we won't get into, but I was there for the prep and I was there for the final round. And what made it very eerie is that there was no gallery. So we are watching a major championship. I am outside the ropes. I don't know why they had ropes, but it was me, his agent, and his girlfriend. That was the gallery. Okay. Jeez. And there was Sean Foley. He was following Cameron Champ, his player, and we're talking. It was like watching a member guest at your local country club, right? And so it's very weird that you go, it's a major championship, right? And yet there's nobody here. There's no grandstand.
Didn't really feel like one, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't. Yet then you saw a leaderboard and you saw, of course, other things around that, okay, this is a professional major event. So what was cool about it is as he keeps going up the leaderboard, and the last back 9, one of my favorite stories that he said after the fact was they asked him, hey, do you look at leaderboards? And he said, well, yeah, I do. And they said, well, what happened when you were looking at leaderboards on the final round? And he goes, well, I was on number 12 and I saw my name on the leaderboard. And I was tied with 6 other players because it was a tight, packed leaderboard. Yeah. I mean, there's Tony Finau, Cameron Champ, Matthew Wolff, DJ, right? And they asked him, so you see that? How you feeling? He goes, well, I see I'm tied for the lead. Somebody's got to win. Might as well be me. Now, that's a mindset that went with that, right? Now, I don't know. I'm guessing that's what he's thinking, right? But as he went along, he chips in on number 14. He hit his only poor iron shot of the day, and he chips in, and I'm going nuts. Oh my God, yeah. I have it on camera. And afterwards, I said, man, I hope I didn't bother you when I yelled. He goes, what? Yelled? I was 20 feet away from him. Okay. So at that moment, because it's not like a big roar. I'm the only one yelling. So you're going to hear it, right? Yeah. And so after the fact, for him to do what he did on 16 with driving the green and making eagle, and I'm there with, now we had volunteers that were starting to creep around, right? A little bit more people, just to see that unbelievable. And then, just afterwards, obviously he wins and you're holding a trophy and just so proud of him and just how he handled it. That was, of course, the peak of it because I was there. Right. And be able to see what, again, I'm biased to see what he did on 16 with the drivable par 4. That's got to go down as one of the top shots in major history. Right. Yeah. And be able to witness that. I was extremely, extremely, extremely grateful and fortunate for that. Right. Now, you fast forward a year and the Open Championship is happening, the British Open. And because of COVID, really weird rules with that. We chose that I wasn't going to go. His agent wasn't going to go. There was just a lot of weird stuff behind it. Yet I remember talking to him the night before about, what his goals were before the last round. And he goes, it's to win, right? I mean, it's embracing that, right? And to now see it, we on the West Coast, we're seeing it pretty early in the morning on TV, and his agent's on one side of me, my son's on one side of me, my dad's there, and watching him just play just great golf and just making some saves here, making some putts, and then of course when so now we're going nuts, but we're now so far away, and then you FaceTime him after. So those would be the two extremes that were just unbelievable to be a part of.
Right. And obviously, so you're talking about Harding Park and the effects of kind of COVID. Do you think that played a factor? Obviously, you said he was very locked in, didn't even notice you kind of cheering there. But do you think that played a factor at the time? Obviously, kind of one of his earlier major starts. Do you think that kind of maybe helped him and maybe even took away from some of those players who, like you were naming on that leaderboard, who kind of thrive on that crowd feeling, on that star, quote unquote, star power? Or do you think that at that level, these guys are just so locked in that no matter what's going on around them, they're not really worried about it?
I think when they're that locked in, it doesn't matter. But how do you get locked in? Many may need some of that energy to thrive off of. I think what Collin has proved is that it doesn't matter what environment he's going to thrive in it. He would prefer to play in front of 50,000 people, by the way. Okay. He would prefer to hear those roars. We were at Augusta this past year, and he was paired with Rory in the final group. I might be mistaken. I think Rory shot 64. He shot 66.
The
they
hole
both
out
made
of the bunker on 18.
Shots on unbelievable.
God,
right?
that was
unreal. You could see them feeding off of each other throughout the round of golf. The energy of so he prefers that over there's nobody watching.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think the best of the best can figure out how to lock in no matter what's happening outside of them. Some people don't want to be in front of a lot of people, don't want to be on the leaderboard, and then they falter, but not him.
So obviously we've talked a lot about the mental aspect of golf. You've been doing this for a while. I'm curious if there's anything, let's say over the past 5, 10, 15 years in your philosophy that you've changed, as different things have happened. Your ideas adapt with time. I was wondering if there's any big change that's really happened, or if it's just kind of been, it's the same old things that work time and time again. So I'm just kind of curious on really if anything's changed.
That's a great question. I'm going to answer it slightly different. I'm going to start with swing stuff first, even though I'm going to talk mental in a moment. When I first became a swing instructor, I thought more information was best. So I would learn from Mac O'Grady. I would learn from all these great teachers, and oh my gosh, I know every angle and what's my right elbow and blah, 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 right. And this is well before TrackMan, everybody. So we had to look at angles and positions and stuff like that. And it did help me become a good coach. Don't get me wrong. But I was a very poor teacher at that time because I'm just giving information. Okay. So I look at that the same way in the mental game. Is when I got obsessed about the mental game, I'm reading all kinds of things. And when I wrote my first book, I'm going to write a 400-page book. And I'm going, who the heck wants to read 400 pages on this? Right. So I brought it down to simplicities. I brought it down to things that I know would be of benefit, but simple. How can I take a complex subject and make it simple has always been my goal as a coach. Now, has my philosophy changed? A little bit. I think I'm always about state management. What's the state somebody's in over a shot, mentally, emotionally, physically? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? I don't think that's changed much. I think how I'm helping people get there, I've added more tools in my toolbox. The other thing I'm excited with what the future holds is how do we make the mental game tangible? How do we make it measurable, right? Up to this point, I have people, write out a worksheet. Hey, how focused were you? Well, Rick, I was an 8 out of 10. I go, okay, I guess I got to take your word for it, right? But in full swing, we have TrackMan, we have force plates, we have all these things that are going to measure those performances. Mental game, we're getting there. We are. My company, FlowCode, and it'll be made public pretty soon, is going to be working with a company called Focus Calm, which has a basic EEG device that goes on your forehead to measure brainwave activity, how much effort is involved for you to focus. And it's actually just biofeedback, right? If I do a certain breathing rate, does that change the score? Do I do it? And now we can quantify it. I believe in about 2-3 years, we're going to have a lot of virtual reality that we're going to be training people under. And can I put you under stress, try different modalities, breathing, visualization, so on and so forth, see what works in practice to be able to do that. That's what I'm excited about the future.
Interesting.
So I don't know if my philosophy has changed much. I think I'm going to have more tools at my disposal, like heart rate variability monitors, those type of things, because I want to make sure it works. I don't want it to just be, yes, positive thinking, and that's what it's about. No, that's not what it is. Okay.
Right.
But state management is, and I'm going to help somebody understand what triggers their emotional state negatively, what could trigger it positively, how do they focus better. That's what I'm so passionate about.
Well, you mentioned FlowCode there, and maybe this is the perfect little segue here. Obviously, this is something that you've been working on and developing for a long time, and is almost seems like it's a little bit of just a passion project for you. You seem so invested into this and so dedicated to this. So, talk to us a little bit about FlowCode. What is it in general, and how did you come to develop this? Obviously, you talked about your partnership with Focus Calm, but where do you kind of stand right now as far as everything with FlowCode?
Great. Yeah, I think what as I developed as a coach, I love coaching one-on-one. You know that, Daniel. I love working with somebody and help them achieve their goals. Yet as a business person, I wanted to be able to leverage that. I wanted to be able to grow a business around it. And one-on-one has its limitations. So I did a seminar the other night for 24 juniors, right? Now I can make an impact on 24 people at once instead of just one. Well, FlowCode started as an online platform, which it is, membership site, and flowcode.golf, everybody, flowcode.golf.
That'll be linked in the show notes
that
as well.
We have a membership that sounds good. Is that, being able to share some of these ideas with people in an online platform and a membership, so they can, in a way, self-coach themselves, but I'm there for them and I do group type stuff. And we're also certifying coaches who want to be mental game coaches and helping them create a business and create a philosophy and give them tools and stuff. We have hundreds and hundreds of videos and worksheets and stuff in that platform. So FlowCode is about leveraging the information. It's about reaching as many people as possible and all kinds of different demographics. We just started a junior FlowCode Golf Academy, so I'm very excited about that too. And there's going to be more in-person stuff, but this idea that these skills are going to help somebody not only in golf, but in life. And that's really if you talk about my passion project, it's using golf as a metaphor for life. So how can we help people instead of being stressed all the time? Can we have them be more calmer and more focused and confident and those type of things? We know golf is one of the best ways to train it because it can be the most frustrating. So that's really where FlowCode has come. Is we use golf now. We have other goals down the road of being able to utilize it in other sports and incorporate and so on and so forth.
Right.
Interesting.
Yep. That will be linked down below just for everybody to check out. I highly encourage everybody do so. And even just going through the website, reading everything, there's so much helpful information there. It's for literally golfers of every skill level. If you're trying to get better, there's no reason not to check it out. So
it seems like in the past, 5 to 10 years, physical health and working out has become a big part of the game. And it's kind of taken over a lot and changed how people hit the ball. Their thought process going into a course because they hit the ball a lot farther. It seems like with being able to quantify these mental thoughts that you were talking about with your company and everything, it seems like, do you think that's going to be the new wave in next 5 to 10 years? It's going to be a main focus like working out has become?
Yeah, no, and again, I'm biased, so I'm going to say yes to that. Right. But I think what has changed, honestly, is that when I was a coach, I think TPI, Titleist Performance Institute, came out around 2004-ish, 2005, right? And so as a coach back then, I got certified as a fitness expert, right? All that kind of stuff. And they did a wonderful job of making the physical part of the performance something you could train, get assessed on fairly quickly, so on and so forth, right? And so now that's become second nature. If you get a good player, hey, have you been assessed by a TPI person? Oh, yeah, I know what my limitations are. I think that is where the next thing of golf performance is that mentally, I think we have myself, we have some other great coaches out there that are helping people with the mental game. But once we can quantify it, assess it, and people have a plan, we call it a flow code. What is your code to get into a flow state? When people can train it and be more interactive with it, and then of course they're going to see good results, then we have the buy-in. So I do believe that's kind of that next step. I mean, golf swing wise, the amount of information we have about a golf swing now is through the roof.
Too
right?
much almost.
I can get somebody on a force plate, gears. We have all this capture, all that kind of stuff. So biomechanically, we know what you should do. I get it. But does that always lead to better performance? I don't always think so. So that's me.
So, I mean, you kind of just partially answered this question, but as far as the golf swing goes and how you're working with Collin and applying, whether it's the actual golf swing or the mental side of it, what is a typical lesson, or what is a typical week or process with Collin look like? Is it more just focused on mental side? Is it looking into the swing as well? Is it just kind of a overall macro view of how you're feeling overall going into a week? What does that kind of entail?
Yeah, I think it does start with macro, and then we drill down, right? So it could be, if it's a week of a tournament and I'm on site on a Monday, let's say Monday afternoon, I'm certainly going to check in with him. He's the great player. I'm going to honor whatever he says to me, right? And if he says, "Hey, Rick, my ball flight, I wanted it to cut 10 feet. It's staying straight and it's not cutting," we may look at the physical mechanics. Certainly, we may look at, hey, the club face is not open enough. Maybe the path's not enough left to get the ball moving to the right. So there is the part of me that puts the swing coach hat on to look at cause and effect. Golf is a cause and effect sport, everybody. The ball goes where the club face tells it to go. But is him, in this case, not being able to fade the ball have anything to do with mental? Could be. There could be trying too hard. It could be stress. It could be I'm in between clubs. I mean, there's a lot. Now with him, it's usually not that. Okay. But we would look at all these layers, and we're looking also at him preparing for that tournament week. What is that golf course? Is there any different challenges? What are the grasses? Is the type Bermuda versus this? And now you're getting into, do you need different wedge work? Do you need different? So that's what's fun for me is you, on a week of a tournament, you're preparing to be at your best on Thursday. Monday, Tuesday, we honestly are not doing a lot of swing stuff. We hope not. There's been a couple times. I guess
it's usually not a good thing if you're doing swing stuff right before a tournament.
Usually not. And we know Wednesdays are usually pro-am days. Certainly on major weeks, you don't have a pro-am, but it's a lighter day overall, for sure. When it's off-site and I go to where he lives in Vegas, or maybe he comes to LA, that's when we can experiment a little bit more. That's when we can go into maybe some more deeper details, where him playing tomorrow in a tournament is not going to happen. So it's okay for him to think a little bit more and think, because we do want to reduce thinking, right? We want to be able to trust ourselves in the moment to execute it. So I think week to week at a tournament site, you're preparing for a strategy for Thursday. We would want to minimize swing thoughts. But if it's like, my ball's doing this, we need to reduce that. Okay, yes, we're going to look at video. We're going to look at TrackMan numbers, of course. But I think overall, we're looking at, hey, what's your confidence level? What do we need to focus on? And those types. And we start drilling down more and more. He's got a great caddy to help create strategies and stuff like that. So it depends on week to week, but we go with big picture. I trust what his instincts are. If he says, hey, I'm swinging great. I don't even maybe put a swing on video. But if it's, hey, I'm overcutting it or something like that, then we can look at it from a physical standpoint first and then mental.
Right. I remember there was one time this season, I forget exactly what tournament it was. I think it was a big one, but I remember seeing that like Collin couldn't hit a cut and he was just hitting a draw, like going into the week. And then he got like a top 5 or almost won it or something silly like that. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about. But
I remember. I was getting calls from Golf Channel that week and, hey, why is he can't hit a cut and all this stuff. So I'm going to answer it very quickly, but it was the U.S. Open at Brookline,
right?
And he was the first round leader, shot 66. In the first round, he shot 66, or was it the second round? I'm sorry. He was tied for first after 2 rounds. Okay, and then he did shoot a 66 in his final round to be top 5. That's a pretty good tournament, right? But it's not exactly how he wanted to execute his golf shots. He was having a challenge of cutting the ball. It was going very, very straight. I guess you could call it a draw because it went 3 inches left. Okay. Exactly. Right. So part of it is that it wasn't that he was hitting poor golf shots. Anybody target lines. If you think you're going to cut a ball, you pick a different target line than if you think you're going to hit it straight. That was more of the struggle. Quality of contact was great. Okay. Now, what we have found, and he has since said it in some of the interviews in the last months afterwards, is that sometimes his body wasn't responding how we wanted to. There was a touch of a tightness on his left side, and he wasn't getting through the ball. So that was a little bit of a physical thing that caused it not to cut. Okay. So we're always looking at that. Now, we didn't catch it in time. Okay. And I take responsibility as being the coach, but it does show that even if you're not at your best, you can still contend for a major championship. That's pretty dang good.
Yeah. I think we're sitting here thinking, man, he's hitting a straight ball. That's my God. If only that was my miss.
But if you're used to the last 6 years seeing a ball fade 8 yards to the right or 6 feet to the right with an iron, you do start to change target lines, and there becomes a little bit of confusion up there.
Right, for sure. So kind of transitioning away and maybe into just kind of some miscellaneous questions here. So you've obviously, said you were able to travel and be at Harding Park, and obviously have probably done a fair amount of traveling since then. What in your golf experience, what has been the coolest place that you've been able to visit?
Well, I would say the coolest place was this past summer at the 2022 Open Championship at St. Andrews, being that it was the 150th anniversary and that Collin was the defending champion. There was a lot of pretty cool stuff going on at that time. So that being the history of golf and everything like that, that was pretty special. I think the first time I was at Augusta, and going, I wasn't in the clubhouse. I wasn't allowed in the clubhouse, but you go in between and you go from the clubhouse out to the area and you just see the massive property. That was like, holy smokes, look at this place. And it was my first time ever being there. So that was really neat. And then the other one that comes to mind was Collin's first US Open that he qualified for, which was the 2019 at Pebble Beach. And so now you're at Pebble. He's just turned pro. And you're playing the US Open there. I mean, that was pretty special.
Yeah.
So obviously you just named off a bunch of amazing places you've just been. Where is one place that you haven't gone that's on your bucket list that you really want to go to, if there's any?
Oh, no. There's plenty. There's plenty. I think, I fell in love with the courses in Scotland. I think when they have it at Carnoustie or something like that, I think that's going to be pretty cool. I just came back from Australia giving some presentations and being at Royal Melbourne and stuff like that. There's a lot of these historic places. I've never been to Pine Valley. There's some pretty neat, but from a tournament standpoint, like I'm really looking forward to the US Open 2023, LA Country Club, right in my backyard. Right.
Yep.
And Collin played the Walker Cup there in 2017. I think it's more the experiences, like being at the Ryder Cup, the experience. I mean, Whistling Straits is a great golf course, but the experience of a Ryder Cup, right? That is very, very special. So I like the experiences maybe more than just the course.
Right. Cool. Well, we'll end it off with one final question here, which we have dubbed in our notes as the impossible question. So you can answer this however you please or refuse to answer this. But the impossible question, if you had one piece of advice that would apply to the majority or all golfers out there listening who have stuck around to the end of this podcast to improve their game, what advice would you give them?
Flow follows focus. Your ability to focus on the present moment is a superpower.
There you go.
Short and simple. Love it.
There you go.
Making the complex simple. There you go. That is FlowCode.
Awesome. Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This is something that we're going to have to go through and listen to a couple more times just because there's so much good information in here. But we really appreciate you being here and taking the time for this. It was obviously something super special to us. So
thanks for the opportunity, guys. Now I can be on TikTok, huh?
Perfect.
Right, there we go.
There you go. Awesome. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Rick.
Oh, he shanked it. Oh, look at that line, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, boy, is he out of sync. That even sounded, it was a tenor sound, wasn't it, Peter? Oh,
boy, he gets really leaning on it with the lower body.
That hurt to watch right there.